This is the 20th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, Aftco, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. A run of in-studio guests continues. We had Blake Capps, who won the Bass Nation Championship in studio. He brought the trophy there. Kept it in Oklahoma, Muskogee guy.
Awesome.
You know Blake at all? The Capps?
Met him a couple times.
Yeah. And that dude's got it going on. Like he's no entry fee now for the Elite Series. So he's in the Elite Series. He's in the Bassmaster Classic. He won 50 freaking grand. Like he's got, like that's the tournament to win. So was hoping I would win it, but glad to see someone, good dude from Oklahoma win it. And then had Matt Steffen in studio. We did the whole Master Angler deal. And we ended up catching 2 Master Angler crappies, which lead me to calling you, which I said, man, I had Zeke Anderson in the studio. When did you come in last year about this time?
Yeah.
And we did a little bit of a crappie show where we kind of combined it with bass fishing. And I said, dude, let's come back in. Let's do the same thing. And then let's hop in the truck and make a drive and see if we can't catch a 3-pounder, because I'm convinced that Matt Steffen lost a 3-pound crappie during the 4-day challenge. So I brought the master in. We're going to talk a lot about, there's a lot of parallels, in my opinion, between the crappie world and the bass fishing world, and pick your brain a little bit about it. And then we're going to hop in the boat. How you been, man?
Man, I have been great. Great to be here. Great to be back, and super excited to go try to find you your first 3-pound crappie. It's going to be a good time, man.
It is. You have worn a lot of hats over the past 6 years within the industry, but you've kept a full-time job in the industry. Currently, you do a lot of, well, what do? You do a lot of marketing and PR and pro staffs and everything for a number of different companies right now.
Yeah, basically kind of freelancing now, so to speak, but working with several different brands, always looking for more to work with, obviously, but helping with social media marketing. It's so important right now, especially with everything, all the changes we're seeing in the fishing industry regarding pro staff and all that. We won't dive off into that, but
we can. I mean,
yeah, we can talk a little bit about it. But major changes, major shifts going on, and it's so content based now. Historically, you bring on pro staffers, and yes, they'll send you some pictures, maybe some videos here and there. But it is so much more than that now, to where content is king. And so there's definitely a parallel shift there going on, where companies are starting to put their resources elsewhere into content creators. It's not just tournament fishermen now. I mean, I've got buddies that they've never fished a tournament in their life, and all they do is create content, and they're making some money from different brands providing that content for them. So it's fun. I'm also doing some emceeing still in national level crappie tournaments. A big one next March. The biggest event of the year every year is Crappie Fest down at Lake Fork in March, and I'm in talks with them to hopefully be the MC down there for that event. So
like the Mercer of the crappie world.
Yes,
in a roundabout way.
That's that's kind of the goal. It's fun. I mean, I love fishing. Don't get me wrong. Love tournament fishing, and won't ever quit doing it. But being on the stage and getting to hype up every angler that comes across it, it's a rush for me. It's fun. I really, really enjoy it. And so hoping to get to do more of that in the coming year in 2025. So
how much crossover would you say angler wise is there? Obviously Kevin Rogers comes to mind as a tournament crappie angler who's moved over to the professional tournament bass fishing side. But as far as like crappie guys who fish bass tournaments, bass guys who fish crappie tournaments, aside from Kevin Rogers and maybe one or two other guys, like I don't know anybody. It's weird to me because it seems like all the bass guys love crappie fishing, but that like doorway into the world of crappie tournaments just hasn't opened yet. Is that a fair assessment? I mean, do you see a lot of bass guys that are dabbling in the crappie tournaments, or it seems like there's a pretty firm line between you're either a crappie tournament guy or bass tournament guy?
People tend to stay in their lane in regard to tournaments. I know I've got a lot of crappie fishing buddies that are hardcore and full-time guides that love to bass fish occasionally. You know, it's kind of the same thing. A lot of my bass fishing friends, they go crappie fishing during crappie season.
Yeah.
You know, the spawn.
What I do.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, no, crappie season is like,
for you is different.
Okay, yeah.
Because you've learned crappie season for you is one, your off season for tournaments, in the winter time being the best time of year to crappie fish. Right now, it's just starting to get really good. You'll catch the biggest fish of the year. But for most people, it's springtime during the spawn. They're hitting the banks, and we've learned a lot with forward-facing sonar about how these fish behave during the spawn, during the spring, where they're spawning in. It might be 30-foot deep water, and there's a 20-foot tall boat arc tree or something. They'll spawn in that tree.
Yeah, the spotted bass we've learned, or we'll do the same thing on like Table Rock and on Clearwater fisheries. I think even on Fork, on those big old hardwood stuff, to where they'll stay suspended and literally build a nest on over, like you said, 20, 30 foot of water, like in the crotch of a tree or on a big stump top or broken down tree top. It's pretty amazing when you think about that. It's
remarkable. I mean, it's so fun to continue to learn more and more about the way these fish behave, and because it helps you pattern them better and you know, increase your catch rate and hopefully catch the biggest fish in the lake. But they'll spawn on anything their eggs are going to stick to.
Yeah. I'm taking a little heat from Funky Fisherman. He said, "Why are we talking about trot line bait America?" Guys are saying it's been kind of crappie talk live. Matt Steffen's a little salty. I did tell Matt. I said he goes, "No kidding." Matt was telling me he was bringing Zeke in before our day was even over. Listen, like this is who I kind of learned. One of the guys that I learned how to do this stuff from, run stuff by. But I think it's a great kind of hybrid show to talk about, because there are a lot of ways that you can become a better bass fisherman by targeting other species. I don't know if I've used this comparison a lot, but you know, you look at it like a big hockey guy, right? I was a big hockey guy, but growing up, Wayne Gretzky was my guy, man. I have like 400 Wayne Gretzky cards, but like he was big on like multi-sports, right? So like baseball, lacrosse, other sports like that. To make you better in your primary sport. I know Michael Neal has done articles on Major League Fishing about it. Kevin Rogers has talked about it. I've experienced it firsthand, but I feel like taking time to target another species really helps you in bass fishing instead of just staying one species like that. Especially, you look like a Steve Kennedy. A lot of the guys who love to are really what I would call naturals at the bass fishing game, that understand fish behavior patterns, movements, current situations. They love just fishing for anything, and then they just apply it to bass. In your experiences, have you seen that too, to where the guys who are really good at crappie are also really good at other species as well?
100%. I mean, you know, I spent 5 years selling these products, electronics, right, for the bass tank. And it was great, and loved my time there. And so I had a lot of time to I mean, all I did was talk to customers every day and try to teach them over the phone how to learn forward-facing sonar. And every bass fisherman I ever talked to, and I stand by this to this day, go learn how to target crappie, because you learn your electronics that way, and you learn what you're looking at. You learn how to identify different fish species. It's easier to target crappie than it is bass with forward-facing sonar. That's just a fact. It's a simple.
And why is that?
Because crappie don't move typically. Crappie, we're looking for big glowing balls that are sitting still, and we're also not having a bomb cast to them, 80, 100 feet away. We're using long rods to vertically dip these fish. in the muddy water here in Oklahoma, that's what we do. There's other states I travel to where I've got to stay back off the fish and cast to them with a 7-foot rod and a 16th ounce jig usually. So I can't throw that very far, really accurately. So I'm talking 30 feet, So there are different techniques other than just vertically dipping them.
So if you're a bank beater, a guy who's a power fisherman, you have been your entire life, but you're a tournament fisherman, you want to incorporate technology into your game. The crowd, like this winter from now, especially if you're not in hard water states, you're in states that don't freeze. Great way to go out, be productive, and get results in that open water and get more comfortable with it by literally targeting crappie.
Absolutely. And now through March-ish, maybe into April even, is the time to go find them in that open water. They are out during the wintertime. These crappie, especially the bigger fish, they move out and they follow bait around.
Just like the bass.
Just like the bass do. Just like the bass. So, and I'm not saying you can't find them on brush piles and trees, because there are definitely still going to be some there. But if you're wanting to learn how to target open water fish, whether it's bass or crappie, go out, get in the river channel, whatever lake you're at.
Now, are we talking like, does this work from Grand all the way to 500-acre lakes?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. So even the big water lakes. Obviously, for anything we talk about today, let's just use Eufaula as an example, because Eufaula is...
It's a monster.
Yeah, and the crappie, it's the crappie capital of Oklahoma.
Oh, for sure, in Oklahoma. It's a top 10 lake in the country.
Yeah, so just kind of walk through that.
It's funny because I was thinking about this on my way here this morning. How crappie tournaments used to be won. The old adage was, get as far away from the dam as possible, find the muddiest water you can, and you'll find the highest concentration of crappie. Okay. And there's a lot of truth to that still, but it has shifted on how tournaments are won. You can still go fish that way. I love going to fish that way, finding that dirty water, going up a river, whatever. But as far as a tournament goes, the industry has finally gone to 5 fish instead of 7.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is that new this year?
New this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like across the board crappie tournaments had been 7
forever.
7 forever.
For years.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to be 20 back in the day, back in Wally.
You could still cull, or you just caught 20 and came in?
Oh, you could still cull.
Oh, that would be a nightmare.
Dude.
Wait a second. You would have 20 crappie in your box.
This not in my lifetime.
I know, but back when they started.
Yes.
Because back when bass was 15 or 20, it was you string them up.
And take them to the scale and take a knife to them afterwards.
But the crappie, I cannot imagine, especially in the colder weather, digging through there and trying to find and put them all on freaking spring scales back then and measure them.
And you're talking, I mean, not ounces, hundredths of a pound on a spring scale.
So then it went to whatever 15. So then I thought it was 7
for years,
and now it's basically what bass is.
Basically, what bass is. There's, we were tired of seeing the biggest fish in the lake being killed every time.
Because it's not a catch and release deal, is it?
No, it's a bring him in, keep him alive,
and that's just because you want them to live to prove that they didn't show up with them stashed somewhere in the boat. But then in 90% of the situations, a crappie all day and a live well, its mortality rate is low in some instances, or high in some instances, but also low in some instances. But
high in the summertime.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really about heat, and they've also done a good job, the trails, of adjusting tournament dates and trying to get out of those, heat of the summer months. So 5's been a lot better success rate in releasing the fish after the tournament, as far as living, and so it's been a key factor in this shift that I'm talking about, on where it was get as far away from the dam as possible. I just a few weeks ago was down on, I'll say the name of the lake. I don't care. It's Lake of the Pines in Texas. That's about a 15,000 acre lake. So it's decent size. Yeah. And first place I went and looked was way up the river, found tons of fish, dude. It was so fun. I mean, 8 foot of water. I'd catch all the 150s I wanted.
So 1.5 pound crappie, if you put it on the board, that's a 13-inch crappie.
These were 13 and a half inch fish mostly. And I ended up fishing up the river during the tournament, and 5 fish, we had like 10, 14, so over a 2-pound average,
which is
I felt good about it.
14 and 3/4 inch to 15 inch
14 and a half, 15 inch crappie.
I'm sorry, some guys do the weights and some guys do the inches. So if you're listening up north, everyone does inches. If you're listening down south, no one cares how long it is. They want to know what it weighs.
Well, it's because I've caught 13 inch crappie that weigh 2.25 pounds.
Exactly.
I mean, you've been on some of those lakes with some mutual friends and seen just these, they look stunted. They're just footballs. But this tournament on Lake of the Pines was won by awesome guy named Cale Ward and Dylan Gossett. Really good dudes. They started at the dam, got in the river channel, and just covered 10 miles of water on their trolling motor. So the days of trying to catch 50 or 60 a day and cull through them, old school crappie tournament style, now guys are finally getting the mindset, I'm only looking
Bass
for
mindset.
5 bites. Bass mindset.
We've talked a lot about the technology. You got the Power Breaks hat on. I got the Power Breaks sweatshirt. The scope is taking over the crappie world, bar none. We know what's happened in the bass world as far as the division with it, the utilization, the integration into pretty much every aspect of the bass fishing. Walk me through what that's been like in the crappie world, because I feel like the bass world is behind when it comes to the technology. One of the reasons why I knew about scope even early was because it was like, I legit had it for like 3 years and was like, man, I bet this would work for bass, where you guys had done it. So you guys are kind of ahead of where bass fishing is right now. Did you go through the backlash phase? Did you go through like a changing the guard phase? Did you go like talk about that whole transition and then where it is now, specifically in the tournament world, because this is Bass Talk Live, and kind of what the scene is like in the crappie world as far as the utilization of technology.
It was when it first came out.
So what, 2017?
2017, a lot of people in our part of the country here in the Midwest really adopted it, Oklahoma specifically. I was lucky and got it really early.
Like when I say really early, in the country, I don't know if you want to talk about this.
No, it's
or
fine.
not. Like in the country, like how many people had Panoptics the first time you looked at it and kind of understood what it was?
The original Panoptics?
The original Panoptics, the original being able to see a live image in front of the boat.
I personally only knew 2 people that had it.
In the country.
In the country. One was in Oklahoma, one was in Missouri.
And was part of that because a lot of that technology and the companies were based in Oklahoma, and you had relationships there to where you had guys that were like, hey, like, check this stuff out.
One of Garmin's engineering teams is in Tulsa.
Yep.
And so I was fortunate enough to know some beta testers that worked with that engineering team. And those were the only guys I knew that had this technology. And even the guys that I knew that had it weren't using it.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I mean, I'll never forget the day. It was Sky took up Hominy Creek, and it was getting later in the day. Sun was going down. We caught fish all day, but not crazy. We turned on Panoptics, and the fish just, it was not Panoptics that made them fire up, but we started catching fish just like crazy. I mean, you could not keep them off the hook. So we turned on Panoptics to, hey, let's check this out. And we were watching crappie swim from 15 feet away to come just annihilate our jigs.
Which was just at that time an orange blob on a blue screen.
Yes, that's all it was. But it was fascinating because that's when it clicked.
I had you tell that story just to say, like, you literally are probably the earliest adopter. There's a lot of guys who crappie fish now that you introduced that to and taught it from.
Yeah, man, I was super fortunate to be in that position.
So that's where it started. So now walk us through, and I just am interested in the parallels between bass. Walk us through the technology sweep through the crappie world. So from 2017 on in the tournament world.
If you're in Oklahoma specifically, Oklahoma, and it trickled into North Texas, you picked this up really quick, saw the value in it, how much it helps. As tournaments that year, as they were going further east, specifically to Mississippi and Grenada. There were a lot of people on Grenada. They were
like the Falcon Lake of crappie.
Yes, yeah, Grenada. It's yes, the Falcon Lake of crappie fishing. I've caught more 3-pounders out of that lake than anywhere in the country. The guys over there and the gals over there, you can't use that to catch crappie on Grenada. That's not how we catch them here. Spider rig. They're not on trees. They're out in the open. Blah blah blah. First tournament there, the guys that had live scope, there was only a handful of them. They were the top 5, by far the top 5, and it was in that moment that everyone in the country got awoken to it from a crappie standpoint, a tournament standpoint.
So it was basically one tournament. It wasn't a year or 2 years.
It was one tournament that really changed everybody's mind about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow, you can, and if you had it then and you were great at making content, your stuff got hundreds of thousands of views, maybe
from crappie
millions from crappie. Yeah.
Wow.
Everybody wanting to see what this new technology is. And so it was good for the first couple years. Everything was kind of copacetic.
No backlash.
A little bit, but nothing crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then the backlash started a couple years in.
From who?
How to say this politically correct?
It is a bass show, so the odds are.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, from whiny guys that can no longer compete.
Okay. So the guys that continue to spider rig, or the guys that continue to dip a minnow blind.
Yeah. Or pull baits even.
Troll.
A lot of guys troll.
Okay.
But spider rigging was the thing for tournament fishing in the crappie world. And guys didn't want to give it up.
And I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but I just want to make sure people understand what that is. So that's where you have the rod holders up front. You have 4 on either side. You have your trolling motor in the middle. You have your long rods out straight down, and you literally have a spread of 8 rods, and you're slowly trolling across open water, flat, whatever it is. And then one rod will go down and then tangles in the other 7, and then it's a total disaster.
It's a nightmare.
Anyway,
baits on
that's
each
what
rod.
spider rigging. That's what spider rigging is.
Yeah, that's spider rigging. And
so that would have been what, 2020?
2000, probably 19 is when this really started.
And what was the backlash? Just complaining online, or people trying to get tournament organizations to change it, or what was the?
All of the above, but mainly trying to get tournament organizations to change it. And crappie are prolific breeders.
Yes.
Right. They are panfish. Always have been, always will be. So people got real worried about populations.
Yeah.
And so we got to change limits and do these things and stay ahead of it. But the bashing of tournament directors and tournament trail owners, people just got nasty with it.
And this was 2 to 3 years before this started happening really on bass, on the bass fishing side, regardless of organization.
It's funny because I've been following this whole thing, the bass fishing side, and I kind of laugh at it because I'm like, okay, we went through this 2-3 years ago in the crappie world. It's the same thing. And
so what happened?
It'll level out.
No, that's what I'm saying. We're going to get there. That's what I said. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you in it is.
It will.
You know what I mean? Like cargo shorts get popular at a certain area 3 years after they've already been out of style up in a trend.
Absolutely.
So that's what 2019, 2020. So like what happened?
Eventually the people that were the big complainers about it, the big whiners about it, they phased out.
So the tournament organizations didn't change
anything.
Was there talk about changing anything?
Oh, there were talks. I was involved in those talks. And I was always an advocate. I'm pro live scope. I'm pro forward facing sonar. And I watched the crappie tournament industry go from down here to having 30, 40 boats at a tournament to up to 170.
Wait. With scope?
With scope, it went up.
The tournament participation
went up.
With live scope tripled in the crappie world.
Doubled the triple, yes.
Why?
Because it brought a young angler.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Exactly. There's so many correlations.
That's why we're having this show.
Exactly.
People thought we were going to come on here and talk about the 16th-ounce crappie jigs, which we might, but listen, they you guys hopefully stuck with it with BTL. Like this is good stuff here.
It's the same correlation.
Still
Younger
20, 21, you're seeing guys that you didn't know who they were that are coming in and beating legends.
Yeah. I mean, I was one of them early on.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in my mid 30s. I had crappie fish for years, but when LiveScope came out, and I had even tournament fished for years, and I was a middle of the pack guy in club tournaments, kind of trying to learn how to pattern these fish and stuff. And as soon as LiveScope came out, man, everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
Everything changed. I went and finished second place in a big tournament, national level tournament, the Wally Marshall Classic with John Sokup.
Yep.
And from there, it was just lights out. A big pro crappie trail tournament on Lake Fork. I went down there and beat who was at the time considered the two best guys in the world with LiveScope. Josh Jones,
mm-hmm.
Matthew Rogers. Matthew's a great angler up in Missouri. So LiveScope brought in this new crop of young anglers to a sport that was traditionally a bunch of old guys.
Yeah. Sitting down.
Yeah. Sitting down.
Putting minnows
fishing.
on gold hooks, dragging spider rigs.
That's it. And that was a lot of the tournament world. So you had this influx of new anglers.
So the tournament organizations loved it.
At first,
okay,
everyone got excited about it. And this is great. This is huge. It's growing the sport. Finally, there's something to help grow crappie fishing.
And that's when the bass tank, which you're no longer with the bass tank. Obviously we are. I'm good buddies with Scott still. Actually, they're running some really good specials that are starting for Black Friday there. But that's when the bass tank went through the freaking moon.
It went bananas.
And that at that time, I would go into the where everything was getting installed, and it was always crappie boats, not bass boats.
Yeah.
Like it was, you'd be walking and be like, wait a second, this guy's a $75,000 crappie boat.
Yeah. And
they were coming from all over the country. And this was at the very beginning when like you would go to like a 19, 20, 20, when you go to like an open and you'd be like, dang, that guy's got scope. Like he's on it. Mm-hmm. But it was maybe 20% of the guys had it.
Which was just wild to me.
But in crappie, it went from what in a 2-year period, it went from 5% having it to 95% having it.
100%.
100%
in less than a 2-year period.
It was shocking how quick it happened in the crappie world for me.
Yeah, you didn't
and I wasn't
show
even
up.
in it.
You didn't show up to a tournament without it.
Yeah.
And I know there are multiple different brands and all that. In the crappie world, it's LiveScope. That's what Garmin LiveScope. So everybody uses. Gives you the best detail. I've used them all.
Yeah. Okay. So it's 2020, 2021. You've got an influx of all these tournaments of going from 30 to 40. You've got new blood in it, guys who are beating guys that you've never heard of before. And then the backlash started.
And then people start getting in their feelings, I'll say. Guys that have been legends in the sport and unbeatable for years and years and years, all of a sudden they're finishing bottom of the pack.
Yeah.
And they're still out there trying to spider rig and do it the old school way. And it just wasn't going to work. So, unfortunately, it was the same thing going on in the bass world right now. And I hate to see it in the bass world, but that's just part of growth and part of technology. And in my opinion, you've got to adopt the new technology to continue moving forward. So did the numbers for the crappie tournaments stay up? Were there organizations, any of the crappie trails that went to no scope? Where is it now in 23 and 24 moving into 25 as far as the health and I guess let's just use the word morale of the community? It's 23 this year was a tough year for the crappie fishing community. 24. Sorry, 24. Yeah. Yes. Tough year for the community, and I think it was a tough year nationwide. Correct. In the industry. Just there's a lot of factors there, the economy, and what I also think people discount is part of this upward shift that we saw in the crappie world. I'm sure it was the same in the bass world. Was the COVID years astronomical? Yeah. And then you base that on your level, and then when it goes down, you're like, my God, we're sinking. But really, you're still above where you were in 18 and 19. That's it. And we saw the exact same thing with BTO with the numbers and stuff. During those couple of years, we had an influx of new people that were getting into it. They listened to it on iTunes. They watch it on YouTube, and I talked to a lot of other content creators, and they're like, man, the numbers are
down, like, what am I doing wrong? And I'm like, you're not doing anything wrong. Like that, we've got a core audience of what it was, and it was just inflated for a couple years there, where we thought there were hundreds of thousands of people that were actually interested in this, but they got into it. Things go back, and then the core guys come back to it, and I mean, I don't sweat it at all.
No, now people can go on vacations and go enjoy their lives again. Where for 2 years, it was one of the few things that people could do is go fish a tournament. And they came out in droves, and put that on top of the live scope boom.
Yeah.
You know, the forward facing sonar boom, and it took off.
So
now it's leveled
bait-wise,
back out.
The big thing that's happened in the bass fishing industry bait wise is you have categories of baits that are struggling. Deep diving, crankbaits, some of the plastics, that type of thing. And you've got and rightfully so, going, hey man, like, we're looking at this stuff, and the more this gets, like, it's killing 7 and 8 figure sales on baits that traditionally were strong. Did that happen in the crappie world too? And then have you noticed in the past couple of years, has there been a rise in companies that have catered to what is effective now, that are actually seeing a lot more sales than they had before? Like, has there been a shift in the baits?
It's been the exact same thing you're talking about on a much smaller scale, because crappie baits cost pennies on the dollar compared to what you guys spend on bass baits.
Mm-hmm.
But the same shift has occurred, just not at that dollar amount level. Where it was before, it was a lot of minnows. I mean, crappie
live
minnows,
like real live minnows from the bait store.
Go buy them in a plastic bag, put the air in it, and the whole thing. And it drives me nuts that they're still allowed in some tournament trails. Live bait. Yeah. It drives me crazy. But so it went from that to more people using artificials, which was good.
Okay.
But primarily people were using large plastic artificials, 2.5 to 3 inch baits on a big 1/4 ounce jig head.
Mm-hmm.
The shift now is, I mean, the first bait that I drop on any lake I go to, I don't care what time of year it is simply a 32nd ounce hair jig, a white body chartreuse tail, 32nd ounce hair jig with a 1/4 ounce weight up above it. Just because I think that it pretty much, if it's a black fish, he's going to react to it. If it's a white fish, he's going to react to it.
Black crappie, white crappie.
Black crappie, white crappie,
yeah.
Sorry. And anything's going to eat a bait that size. Now, there are days that you might have to size up and use bigger baits, but I just talked to a buddy of mine the other day that owned a plastic company for 7 or 8 years, and he's recently shut it down. Plastic crappie jigs. He's recently shut it down because his words, and I won't say his name, I won't call him out, but his words were, I wasn't even using my own baits.
Hair.
I use hair jigs 95% of the time.
Really?
Yeah. And to the point where he was like, if I don't believe in my own product, then I can't continue to push it and sell it.
Interesting. So there was definitely a shift.
Oh, huge, massive shift. I didn't use hair jigs at all before forward facing.
And why is that? Just the subtle?
Nobody was tying quality hair jigs. You go to Walmart and some of those big box stores and find them for 79 cents a piece. Now you've got guys that their full-time job is tying hair jigs and selling hair jigs, and the quality is through the roof.
Do you think that the tournament crappie fishing industry currently is in a better position now than it was in 2016?
It's a good question. Probably not. Honestly, I'll tell you, I mean, what happened that has really hurt it is there are a select few guys out there that have basically been on a tear for the past 1.5 years and win everything.
And we're seeing that in bass fishing.
Win everything.
Yeah.
And once that starts happening, it discourages people from wanting to show up and compete. Now, a lot of people are built differently, where it's like, hey,
motivates you.
Got to get better. But a lot of guys that have been in it for years and years kind of burned out, and it's a little discouraging. So, like I said, this year's a tough year.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2025 is going to bounce back. This Crappie Fest event traditionally gets 300 to 400 boats. It's a big fish style tournament. And I think the more that we can mix up some of those, the reason I advocate and push so hard for these big fish style events, one big fish, you can win $25,000 at this event. For a crappie tournament, that's pretty dang good.
Yeah.
With one fish, anybody can get lucky and stumble across one big fish.
Yeah.
Anybody. And so you've got different winners, and it mixes it up a lot more.
Would you say that the crappie tournament industry has grown or shrunk since 2016?
I think it's grown. I think it's grown as far as definitely the number of eyeballs that are on it.
Yeah.
It's grown leaps and bounds.
Are there more crappie fishermen now than there were in 2016 as a whole, do you feel like? Not even just tournament, but are there more people that are putting money into the crappie fishing industry than there were before the technology?
100%. And they're spending more money now. Like you mentioned, seeing a crappie angler having a $75,000 boat. Now, if you go to a national level tournament, you're going to see $150,000 boats. Where before we were running 16.5-foot bass trackers.
Yeah.
Now we've got 21-foot, whatever,
Yeah.
Rangers, Skeeters, bass cats.
And I'm not trying to like lead you in anything. I didn't know we were going to go that far down this path, but it's very interesting because now in my mind, I need to go get a muskie dude on, like who runs a national muskie trail, because I feel like they went in the exact opposite direction that the crappie industry did. Like they went, whoa, you see these things and catch them. No. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. Because they banned it, right?
Yeah.
Like you cannot use it
in most of them. It
Yeah.
was like, so I would be very interested to get someone in the muskie tournament world to come on and talk about the industry before, during, and after.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's just on a different scale with the bass.
It absolutely is. And I think that everybody's going to follow the same trajectory on the trends on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, like I said, down year, but 2025 is going to, I think, get right back up to that baseline that we need to be at. So,
dude, that was fascinating. I thought,
huh?
That's fascinating. I mean, you can literally know what you went through at the crappie, and you're watching it happen on the bass right now,
and it's
just on a bigger scale.
And it's like I said, man. I mean, I've got my popcorn. I'm sitting back, enjoying the ride, enjoying the show. I'm thrilled to not be involved in all the drama again.
I hear you.
Around it. I was peak at my career.
I mean, I
was in the middle of everything.
Yeah, you're the dealer.
Yeah. I was the dealer.
and Reagan was coming out with this is your brain on drug stuff.
literally met people in back alleys to deliver their LiveScope setups, quite literally.
Oh, you had guys that probably called
Cash
because they were having withdrawals, their scopes broken, and they're just having a meltdown. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. I said we're going fishing today. When we come back, we've got some questions about rod length, a little bit of bait to get guys started. If you're in the bass world, you want to dive into the crappie thing, and then we'll wrap things up. So BTL on a Wednesday, Zeke Anderson in studio. BTL Bass Talk Live, more like Fishing Talk Live. I feel like we've related bass fishing to it good, but we'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
everything you need, one legendary brand. Top on, Strike King.
Gear that just plain works. Cast after cast after cast. AFTCO. Any fish, any water.
Beat down it.
Why are you talking about crappie?
All right, we're back. Now, everyone's cool with us talking about crappie. Like I said, I was glad that we were able to relate it a little bit back to bass fishing.
Yeah.
But now we are going to talk about crappie. All right. Funky Fisherman, he goes, at some point, can you break down why a 16-foot rod versus a 10-foot, etc.? Legit question. He really wants to know what's with
Sure.
the giant rods.
I know it looks goofy. It looks silly. Some of these rod lengths are kind of getting out of control at this point, but a 16 versus a 10-foot, and that's natural progression. When I first started with forward-facing sonar, I was using 10-foot rods. Now, if you think about how the bow of your boat's set up, you're typically sitting back, standing back, a few feet behind your grass, trolling motor, all that, foot pedal. And so you've got 3 or 4 feet right there to cover. And so now your 10-foot rod is a 6-foot rod. And so the further you can keep those fish out in front of the boat and away from your trolling motor, away from your transducer pinging, the better chance you have of catching that fish. Just because the fish stays put, but you're right up on top of them, 3-4 feet away from them with your 10-foot rod to dip them and catch them, that fish could go lockjaw on you. They may stay there, but just not bite. So that's the idea with the longer rods is dealing with spookier fish. Again, correlation to the bass world, I've seen a lot about this is does the pinging of the transducer, the fish getting smarter, getting educated to forward-facing sonar. And I think there's some truth to that on certain lakes that I've seen. So rod lengths continue to get longer and longer.
The makeup of them, though, they're not like whippy noodle rods. They're like I liken them to like a mat punching rod almost for bass, like where you go with the 710 when you're down there in the hydrilla in Florida or on Gunnersville or something. They're designed not to get your bait out further. Like they are designed to get your bait out further, but they're also designed to have backbone and to handle big fish.
So the rods that you use,
yeah,
that's exactly, and the rods I use, same ones. That's how they're designed. Yeah. And that's what I love. Now, there are a lot of limp noodles out there, as I call them.
That's what I'm saying. You could get someone here that's going, hey, I can get a 12-foot rod. I can get a 15-foot rod. But there's a specific, just like in bass fishing, it'd be the difference between a 7-Eleven cranking rod and a 7-Eleven swim bait rod. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same concept. And there's different styles out there for different individuals. My dad, for instance, he's 72 years old. He likes a looser rod than I do, because he doesn't care if he loses a fish. He likes to fight them. He likes to play them out. I want to rip him out of the water and get him on the deck of the boat in the cooler or live well, whatever the case may be. So I use power crappie rods, Todd Huckabee rods.
I'm gonna pull up both. Equal opportunity here. I appreciate you coming in.
Absolutely.
So the first one you pull up. What do you do? Power
crappie,
Todd Huckabee rods. Explain who Todd Huckabee is for those who don't know.
Oh, Todd has been a staple in the sport for close to 40 years now. He's a full-time guide on Lake Eufaula.
In Oklahoma.
Yeah. And all around great guy. Tournament fish for a lot of years. Now he guides and promotes. Just got his rods and shields.
There's the 17-foot carnivore rod.
There's an 18-foot on there. The K rod.
All sorts of different. Which one is on here? The Ninja, the Striker, the Patriot.
The Patriot's a great rod if you want a little lighter, a little softer tip.
Yeah, which one would you
recommend? I go with, I love the 15-foot Ghost.
Okay.
That's my go-to rod for fun fishing and tournament fishing.
Do I see the Ghost? Okay, the 15-foot Ghost right there. $160.
Yeah.
That's your go-to.
That's my
three-piece
go-to.
rod.
3-piece rod.
And then you just put a bass reel on there.
Yeah,
like take a low profile. Like I take my I take the reel that I use for my jerk baits. It's a just a smaller low profile lightweight reel.
Yeah.
And what are you spooling it with typically?
Anywhere from, depending on time of year, 12 to 17 pounds Seaguar fluoro.
No, I'm still a braid guy.
I love it, and I'll use braid if I'm fishing timber.
Yeah, but you're said 12 to 17 pound. This isn't a 4 pound, 6 pound, 8 pound. This isn't a crappie fishing thing. This is what you guys as bass fishermen have to think. This is mat flipping Florida for crappie.
Yeah, pretty much. It's the days of having to get 2 pound, 4 pound fluoro, and these fish aren't line shy. If you know what you're doing, you're not dropping the bait below them. I use fluoro because it cuts through the water faster than braid does.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to manipulate where my bait is in relation to the fish.
Now, you've given me one of those. It is a fantastic rod, but primarily I use the let me stop this screen. I use Denali's 14-foot 3-piece jigging rod. It's basically designed the exact same way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. They're great rods. I mean, I've used them fishing with you, and I mean, both are great options.
And it's that BTS 1401. They're on clearance right now for $89.
Oh yeah, man.
So if you're looking to get into it, a great option to get on it for $89, a 12 and a 14.
That's what I'd start with if I was getting into it.
Yeah,
a 12 to 14. If somebody new gets on my boat that hasn't used forward-facing sonar, I'll put a 12-foot rod in their hand to get them used to it.
And then it's just on the Denali under rods. Go down to the crappie tank. I don't know how long they'll be on discount. I didn't know they were on sale. They're literally 50% off there. They're originally $160 rod too.
It's a heck of a deal.
Are you still, I don't care about talking about this. Are you still a tungsten bead guy?
No.
Have you ever been a tungsten bead guy?
Not really.
So
really.
I go bobber stop, tungsten bead, bobber stop, and then that way when I'm dropping my bait, I have two things that are perfectly vertical that I know so I can pick it up a lot easier. It also adds a little weight and keeps the line down.
Yeah, I always want something up above. So if I don't need a weight up above, then I'll peg a bead of some sort.
So you will?
Yeah, I will. And I've actually done it a couple times that's made a big difference where I've pegged beads with a weight. I couldn't get fish's attention, so I'd drop it down there and I needed something to rattle.
Okay.
We don't have rattle baits in the crappie industry.
Yeah.
And so
dude, I was just in Japan and I got some micro rattles with like a very sharp tip on them. They will fit inside of any size plastic. I wonder if we need to try that today.
We'll see. We might need to if we can't get their attention.
So you're more of, but you don't just have like jig and line. You always have something else above that jig.
Always. It makes it so much easier to pick it up on live scope.
And if you're a bass guy, literally a 1/4 ounce upside down tungsten.
Yep.
Like the exact same that you would use for a Texas rig.
Yep.
Bobber stop, upside down tungsten so it falls straight so you have less water resistance. Boom, it pops out and then you can get your 32nd ounce jig down there, no problem.
That's it. I mean, having 2 points of reference there makes it so much easier because there are days where your screen's perfectly clean and beautiful. Plenty more days where you've got clutter on the screen.
So ironically, we talk about things that exploded in the crappie world beforehand. So you've got this long rod, and a lot of times, you're set 30 to 40 feet out on your live scope, and you get on top of the crappie. So necessity is the mother of invention. Is that the saying?
That's it.
So there were guys that were like, well, how do we get on top of this fish without having to turn our trolling motor around to wash the fish out to then get back on top of it? I think some of you might know where we're going here. Thus, crappie brakes were invented. And that's why they're called crappie brakes, because those things hit the crappie scene, and what percentage of guys have brakes on their boats now?
That's crazy. I mean, the first set of brakes was a guy named Jeff Larch, a close friend of mine. He debuted them. They were homemade. He debuted them at 2019. Wally Marshall.
5+ years ago.
Yeah. And people saw it, and Jeff's a quirky guy. He's always trying new stuff, and no one really jumped on board.
Clay goes, back it up, Terry. Put it in reverse.
Exactly. Put it in reverse, Terry. Put it in reverse.
Oh my God, Clay, you win the show today.
Comment of the day right there.
He put the little
So fast forward.
That's what we do. Back it up, back it up.
Yeah, hit the brakes. Fast forward 2 years, and you started seeing more people adopt it, and then Power Brakes came along, and really
the sponsor of the show. That's Chad, right?
That's Chad.
Okay.
Yeah, Chad Clifton with Power Brakes. He came. It was hokey how we were having to get down on our hands and knees on the back of boats and stow and deploy these things.
Yeah,
it was a pain, man. So Chad again saw a need and has come out with the best brakes on the market for if you got power poles or Raptors, which is what you're running on poles, right?
Yeah, I'm on the poles.
Yeah, so you just deploy your poles, your brakes go down with them
for the next 3 months.
Oh,
well, because the opens you can't fish with them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we're getting you a quick release deal.
So was it funny? Was it humorous to you to see when the Bass guys figured this out, like the reaction of how effective or just how much of a tool it could be, where you were like, yeah, dude, like we're literally 5 years ahead of you on this.
Yeah, it's the same thing where this last year, Bass guys started contacting me. Actually, after I came on your show last year and kind of introduced brakes to everybody.
Yeah.
And you immediately were like, maybe we shouldn't talk about this.
I don't think I had before that. I had not seen them.
You never heard of them.
I had never heard. Were there guys in the bass world before that had them on that were fishing at high level tournaments? No. Did BTL bring those into the tournament?
Brought those into the bass fishing
No,
world.
There's had to have been guys that were doing it. No, I had never seen them.
And I mean, maybe if they made some homemade stuff, but no.
Is there a BTL rule now on Bassmaster?
Oh, dude, probably.
Dude, I got a BTL rule.
You got a BTL rule.
I got a BTL rule.
We call
like
it
the Roland Martin rule,
yeah, dude.
like all that, like the Keith Poche rules. We got the BTL.
It was
rule
brought.
now.
I'm telling you.
Oh, I'm excited.
To my knowledge, it was brought to the bass world right here in the studio, and it took off. I mean, it took off from there, and now we've seen everything go on with.
Did it surprise you? No. SoCap never had him on. No. Did it surprise you when Bass banned them?
No, it didn't surprise me.
Why is that?
It didn't surprise me because there's with everything going on with forward-facing sonar, brakes were the easy thing to get rid of to appease certain people. And I don't know, I don't have any names in my head with those certain people, but it was and the sponsorship dollars, like Power Brakes. We're not a big enough company. No. We can throw $100,000.
You had him on Hamner's boat, right?
We had him on Hamner's boat
when he won the classic.
Yeah, which was awesome. That was huge for us. But it's just you got to take something away, and you're not going to take away. Well, most.
I think it was like the sacrificial lamb.
I think
we're going to keep this, but we're going to say this because we can.
Yeah,
like I said, I don't want to bash Bass on this. It's something that I disagree with. Like I've read what I can and can't say. I'm a Bassmaster Open competitor. Vehemently disagree with it. Still respect Bass's decision.
Sure,
that's where I'll leave it at that.
I understand it,
but I also we're going fishing today. I don't want to have to take these things off and then not have them because I know how beneficial they can be just in boat positioning.
You actually, we should name this after you because of what you want to use them when you can, and
so I called Chad and I said, Chad, here's the deal. Well, first of all, big shout out to Power Brakes. They got banned, and the next day I got a call that said, hey, we still want to be with BTL. We still want to sponsor the show. We still, because we see value in it, which I thought that was a done deal. Which when I was talking to Bass, I was like, dude, this is gonna, directly affect my pocketbook. Like, that's where I draw. Like, I'm on the phone with Bass officials going, that's where I draw the line, because someone else, because of sponsor obligations, is complaining about and blah blah blah. Now it impacts me, and now you got me beating down your door because now I'm the guy that it's financially impacting. So big shout out to Power Breaks for staying. For staying on board. But I called Chad and I said, dude, I want these things on my boat. I want all of it, but I have to have them off for hopefully 20 days of competition. But other than that, I want them on the boat. And he, I think, immediately started working on a removable or a breakaway system. Immediately.
And I mean, I love how this guy innovates. When he hears a problem, his brain just goes to work, and you can see the gears turning. So now it's going to be an option. The Matt Payne Rack Special, we'll introduce it right here. A quickly removable brake system for your poles or Raptors or whatever. So
really,
oh yeah,
and everything stays in. Like, how long does it take to?
Probably take you 2-3 minutes.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So when I head to an open, I can pop them off, toss them in the garage, go fish. Yep. Without my brakes, not catch anything, because the only reason I ever caught one was because of Power Brakes. And then come home, put them back on, and feel complete again. That's it, man. It should be that quick and easy. And Chad's really anal about getting the details right, because obviously that adds connections. So he's been doing a lot of testing with the different connections. And so that's because I'd imagine it would just have to be the same thing it is, but then you rewire it to where it's got to be like a plug that just plugs in and then it comes off. So you still have a wire or a cable power cable that's running up the part of the, It's nothing overly complicated. We just want to make sure everything is seamless. The last thing we need is paying. Clay likes you. Clay's usually not big for compliments. He's had a really good joke, and then he said, "This is genius. Take a problem and turn it into a new product showcase." And you get a compliment and a joke out of Clay on a weekday morning. It's a good day. Appreciate it, Clay. Show. It wasn't my idea. Doing something right. Wasn't my idea. I just got lucky. It was the right place, right time. I got to help be a part of it. So those were going to be on. This is the crazy thing, though. Those were going to be on 90% of boats this year. I know. They were 100% going to be on 90% of boats. I know. I'm very hopeful that Bass will review or will look back, will review that, because even without forward-facing sonar, they are valuable to me. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't care if you beat the banks. Yep. They're valuable. So many circumstances. Not having to flip that front trolling motor around is just huge. If you're a dock fisherman and you skip jigs around docks, I can't tell you at the Bass Nation Championship on Grand how many times I would get my jig stuck on a cable or something, and I would still. So I'll tell you a perfect example, and I haven't told this story. So they're still legal on this in the Bass Nation, right? So, first morning, going down the bank, throwing a buzz bait, whatever, don't catch anything. I come to a dock, drop the poles, halfway down to where I've got the brakes, pull the jig out, flip around one side, go around to the other side, and there's two cables right there. Well, I'm drifting into the cables, and the cables are right in the crotch of the dock. And instead of turning my trolling motor around and hitting the trolling motor to where then 10 feet, exactly where I want to pitch, directly in front, which of the way I'm heading, would have completely washed that area out. I reached down and I just stomped on the brakes, which is just a little foot pedal, and the boat went and slowed down because it was deeper than 8 foot where I was. It would have been the exact same thing as if I had just dropped the power poles. Yeah. It slowed me enough to where I just bumped those cables to where I was now still 7 feet from where I wanted to fish. I blew a 5.10 over the side. It was the biggest fish of the tournament. It's what put me in the top 10 on that day. It's what made me finish in the top 25. And it was just simply that act of not blowing that area out. And you know what? I wasn't even looking at my live scope. I had no clue what was back there. I just wanted to have an unimpeded deal. And that was a Power Brakes around docks deal. It's huge, man. Not blowing fish out is huge. It's made all the difference. So, I mean, you go to a crop tournament now and a national level tournament, 95% of boats have brakes. Yeah. Nick says
if
as a
not all
co-angler, he'd hate to see his boater with those because at some point they always screw up when they have to reverse, and it gives him a area to capitalize. I would also think as a co-angler, and I've had him say this, that they love the breaks because your poles are always deployed. This year I had 0 co-anglers break rods and baits off hitting power poles because my poles were always halfway down.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as a boater, if you like your co-angler, I would always before like try to drop my poles down if I knew I was going to be somewhere, because there's nothing worse than knowing you got a nice guy in the back who's got 6 rods with him, and he goes back and you hear and you look back and he's got a 5-foot rod instead of a 7 then. But yeah, so those poles are down, they're out of the way, they're at water level, and your co-angler doesn't. I mean, the only thing you can do is windmill your cowling now.
There you go. There's so many different scenarios, and they'll stay relevant in the bass world. I mean, guys like you and I know Hamner really believed in them. There's multiple guys.
Yeah, and I don't think
really
they're banned on the BPT.
I don't think so, or MLF.
I don't know. I know they were on. I think Drew Gill has a set.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Becker has a set. Like, we're talking the Power Breaks, Hamner. I mean, dude,
some studs.
3 of the top 10 guys in the freaking world right there that are running the Power Breaks.
I mean,
am I talking them up because they're spot? Yes, but that is a product. Just like I say with the Bass Cat boats, if I had to go out and purchase everything at full price, I'd still run a Bass Cat. I'd still have Power Breaks on them.
And that's why people trust you, because you believe in what you use and promote.
Yeah.
And
I
think that's a conversation for a different episode.
Yeah.
Believing in what you
I see
promote.
John Stewart. I see John Stewart on here. I did a 2.5-hour podcast last night. The Idle Zone Syndicate. It was also on the Kansas Bass Nation Facebook page. And, when I do other shows, I tend to get a little bit more opinionated and go into it. Those guys got me going a little bit. Not in a bad way. I think in a positive way. Like, I thought it was a very intelligent conversation. But if you guys are looking for some more content, go check that out. John Stewart, tournament director for Bass, ran the Bass Nation for a number of years. Now has a lodge up on Grand Lake. I think 10 or 12 rooms there, kind of like a
nice
project for him. I got the name of it.
Something to do for him.
The Lake Lodge at Grand Lake.
The Lake Lodge at Grand.
Yeah. All right. I told you we were going to go half an hour, and we're an hour in. That means a half hour less, so we're going to get to crappie fish. So
good talk, though.
Yeah. See, Dominic watched it. He said, had a hell of a time listening to you last night. It's nice to hear you unfiltered. I tried to stay diplomatic, but dude, I greatly appreciate it. Looking forward to jumping in the boat. I think it's only the second or third time. Ironically, the last time we went, you caught a 6-pound bass on the crappie rod. Remember that?
Oh, I'll never forget.
It was
that.
like your biggest, was it your PB?
No.
One of the top 10 biggest that you caught? Top 2. So it's the second biggest bass you've ever caught in your life.
Yeah. And I just had to prove to you and Juice that it was not a crappie.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, Juice, if you guys are into the Juice's jigs, the hair jig that has become the hottest hair jig in the country, he is doing a drop on the 29th, I think, on Black Friday. You can follow it on juicesjigs.com or Lucky Lure Tackle. They're doing, if you're in the Oklahoma City area, they're doing like some in-store drop. I think the store opens at 7 a.m. and then at the Lucky Lure Tackle website, I think it's just lltackle.com. Let me check.
That's awesome, dude. He's such a good guy. I'm so happy.
lltackle.com at 9 a.m. on the 20th. If I get this wrong, go check it out on the Lucky Lure Tackles Instagram and social media and Juice's Jigs. But I know he's been literally doing like soccer games with his 6-year-old and then coming home and tying for 3 hours and then doing like tumbling with Pate and then coming home. So he's excited to get those jigs. So you can get some in person, or if you want to get your hands on some, now is the time of the year. So, all right, let's go see if this was a one-off on this pond or if there's actually some meat.
Man, I just want to see you with the 3-pounder. Really.
I'll walk out there and I'll show you where the 3-pounder goes. I feel like I've fished long enough now to where the 3-pounder, even if it's a 3.01 and I catch 100 3-pounders the rest of my life, that first one, you've got it. Do you have a good replica guy?
Uh-huh.
You do have a good replica
Great
guy.
replica. Best, yeah.
Does he do bass too? He's a crappie.
Nasty.
Okay. So it will look legit.
Oh, yeah. It'll look just like you want it to.
All right. Well, after 4 days of stuff, I'm a little bit gun shy to say, oh, yeah, we'll just go right out there and just whack a 3. It's a lot tougher than you make it sound.
So much tougher. I mean, Oklahoma 3-pounders are rare fish to catch. So, but hopefully we can go.
We'll give it a shot. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Zeke, thanks for making the drive and coming in studio. Tomorrow, 8:30 a.m., Rex Gage. Back at regular scheduled time. This has been another edition of Retail Bass Talk Live. We'll talk to everyone then. See ya.